All right, this is the last video for today when completing the square day one. So far, we've talked about the square of a binomial and how to solve for x, coming up with two solutions. We then talked about creating perfect square trinomials where we add a c term, so we turn it into a square binomial. Now we're going to bring both of those concepts together, bringing it all together and actually solving an equation. So you're going to get an equation that looks like this: x squared plus 6x equals 216. And we're going to go through the steps to complete the square and to actually solve this to find two solutions for x that worked for this problem. Now you'll notice right off the bat that my answer, I have an actual answer here. So far, in all of our methods for solving quadratic equations, we've set the equation to 0. That is actually not the case for completing the square. We want to have a number on that other side that we can use to find our answer. So the first step is we need to determine C to create a perfect square trinomial. So we're trying to get this into a perfect square trinomial so that we can condense it down into some parentheses that are squared so that we can quickly and efficiently solve for x. So the formula that we use is C equals B over 2 squared to figure out what our C term is going to be. And in this case, our B term is 6. So I'm going to plug that in for B. All that squared, 6 divided by 2 is 3. And that's going to be squared. And my final answer for C is going to be 9. So we've determined what C is. Our next step is we're going to add C to both sides of the equation. So I got x squared plus 6x plus, here's where that C term comes into play. I'm going to add 9 so that the left side becomes a perfect square trinomial. But always in algebra, if I do something to one side of the equation, I have to do it to the other. So I'm going to take that 216 that was already on that right side, and I'm going to add 9 to that side as well. Okay, so we got to keep this equation even. We've kind of added 9 out of nowhere so that we can manipulate our equation to make it a perfect square. But if we do add that 9 out of nowhere, we got to add it to the right side as well. Our next step is to simplify each side. So this left side is going to turn into a square of a binomial. It's going to be x plus something squared. Now that plus something is always going to be half of the B term. Kind of what we did up here in the parentheses. So 6 divided by 2, that's 3. That is always going to be the case. We just take half of the B term and we throw it into our parentheses there. So if I were to compute this out, if I were to FOIL this out, I would get back to this original expression on the left-hand side. Over here, I got 216 plus 9. That's going to give me 225. So what we have accomplished here is we created a square of a binomial that we can now easily solve for x because it's a lot easier to deal with. And that's exactly what we're going to do in our fourth step. We're going to solve for x. And we should get two solutions. To do that, I'm going to find the square root of each one of these sides. So I'm left with x plus 3. And the square root of 225 is 15. But remember that that 15 can be positive or negative because we're saying positive 15 squared can be 225, and negative 15 squared can also be 225. So after we set this up, this is what we started with today. We're going to split this up into two. Actually, before we do that, sorry, I want to isolate X. So I'm going to take 3 away from each side. Put that in another color so that the 3's drop out. And now I'm going to split this up into a positive and a negative side. So my 3's dropped out, so I'm left with X equals, I'm going to start with a negative 15 minus 3. And X equals a positive 15 minus 3. Okay, as long as you got the negative 15 and the positive 15, doesn't matter which order, but it does, you are taking 3 away from each of those situations. So now I've got X equals negative 15 minus 3, that's negative 18. And 15 minus 3, that is 12. Yes. So those are my answers, negative 18 and positive 12. We started way up here, and we've got 2 solutions that make this equation true. Let's check and make sure that we have the right answers here. I'm going to pick positive 12 just to make it easy. So I'm going to go back to my original equation, and I'm going to plug in 12 for X. So I'm going to get 12 squared plus 6 times 12 equals 216. 12 squared, that's 144. 6 times 12, that is 72. And if I add those 2 together, let's look at it. Yes, I'm going to get 216. Check. And that would be the same case if I plugged in negative 18. So that's it. So that's bringing it all together. Again, just following these steps every time, you are going to get the solution completing the square. Thanks for watching.